Part 2. Separate Paths. Portland welcomed Ryan with rain and opportunity. His first apartment was small, just a studio with a view of another building's brick wall, but he didn't care. He was finally doing real work, contributing to projects that actually mattered. The renewable energy company he joined was small but ambitious, and Ryan threw himself into every assignment with the enthusiasm of someone who finally felt like he was making a difference. The first 2 years flew by in a blur of late nights and early mornings. Ryan became known as the guy who would always volunteer for the difficult projects, the one who stayed late to help others meet their deadlines. His colleagues liked him. His bosses noticed him. By his 3rd year, he got his first promotion. By his 5th, he was leading his own team. Dating happened occasionally, almost by accident. A coworker's friend at a party, a woman he met at a coffee shop who liked the same band, a setup arranged by his well-meaning mother during a holiday visit. The relationships were pleasant enough, lasting a few months here and there, but they never stuck. Ryan always found a reason to end things before they got too serious, too focused on career goals. Not enough in common. Wrong timing. His friends joked that he was married to his work, and Ryan would laugh and change the subject because it was easier than explaining something he didn't quite understand himself. There was an emptiness he couldn't name, a space inside him that success didn't fill. He'd lie awake some nights in his now much nicer apartment, wondering why achievement felt hollow when he'd reached the goals he'd set for himself. Then morning would come and he'd push the feeling aside and dive back into work. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away, Maya had chosen medicine. The decision came during her sophomore year when she volunteered at a children's hospital. She met a 6-year-old girl with leukemia who drew pictures of butterflies and talked about all the places she wanted to visit someday. The girl's courage, her hope despite everything, broke something open in Maya's heart. She knew then what she was meant to do. Medical school was brutal. The studying never ended. The pressure was constant. There were times Maya survived on 3 hours of sleep and vending machine coffee, times she cried in her car after particularly hard days. But she never quit. When things got impossible, she would remember that little girl drawing butterflies and she'd find the strength to keep going. During residency in Boston, Maya chose pediatric oncology. Her friends thought she was crazy. That's the hardest specialty, they said. The saddest one. It'll break your heart every single day. And they were right. It did break her heart. Regularly. Completely. But it also showed her what really mattered in life, what was worth fighting for. Maya dated too, though not often. A fellow resident who understood the crazy hours. A nice guy she met at her friend's wedding. A teacher who made her laugh and brought her flowers. Each relationship lasted a few months before quietly ending. Her friends set her up on blind dates. Her mother called weekly asking if she'd met anyone special. Maya always had the same response. I'm focused on my career right now. But that wasn't the whole truth, and Maya knew it. The real truth was stranger, more difficult to explain. That certainty from 15 years ago hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown stronger, more solid. She couldn't imagine building a life with anyone else, even though the logical part of her brain said she was being ridiculous. You couldn't wait your whole life for someone who laughed at you once in a library and then disappeared. Yet she did wait. Not passively, not sitting around hoping. She built an incredible life. She became an excellent doctor, known for her skill and compassion. She published research. She mentored younger doctors. She traveled when she could, had good friends, stayed close to her family. Her life was full and meaningful. But there was always that space, that quiet corner of her heart that remained reserved, untouched. Her closest friend once asked her why she sabotaged every relationship just when things got serious. Maya had tried to explain about seeing the future, about knowing with certainty, but it sounded crazy even to her own ears. So she stopped trying to explain and just accepted that people thought she was too picky or too focused on work. Years 7 through 10 were the hardest for both of them. Ryan got another big promotion, moving to Seattle to head a major division. The job came with a great salary, a corner office, and even more responsibility. He was making a real difference, leading projects that would help combat climate change. But success felt increasingly hollow. He watched his team members leave early to coach their kids' soccer games or celebrate anniversaries, and he felt the weight of his empty apartment waiting for him. Maya finished her residency and joined the staff at an excellent hospital. She bought her first house, a small place with a garden she barely had time to tend. She won awards for her patient care. Parents requested her specifically for their sick children. But at night, eating takeout alone at her kitchen table, she sometimes wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. What if she'd built her entire life around a fantasy? What if Ryan had married someone else years ago, and she'd just been too stubborn to accept reality? But neither of them had married. Neither had even come close. By year 15, both had achieved remarkable success in their fields. Ryan was considered a rising star in renewable energy, frequently invited to speak at conferences. Maya had helped establish new protocols for treating pediatric cancer. Her research cited in journals. On paper, their lives looked perfect, accomplished, enviable. Yet both carried that same strange emptiness, that sense of waiting for something they couldn't quite name. Ryan had stopped dating entirely, telling himself he was too busy. Maya had done the same, using work as her excuse. Sometimes, though rarely, Ryan would remember that girl in the library with her impossible declaration. And Maya, more often than she admitted, would remember the sound of his laugh, kind and amused, and wonder if the universe was playing some cosmic joke on her. Neither knew that their separate paths were about to converge in the most unexpected way. Neither knew that 15 years of waiting was about to finally make sense. The universe, it seemed, had its own timeline. Part 2. Separate Paths. Portland welcomed Ryan with rain and opportunity. His first apartment was small, just a studio with a view of another building's brick wall, but he didn't care. He was finally doing real work, contributing to projects that actually mattered. The renewable energy company he joined was small but ambitious, and Ryan threw himself into every assignment with the enthusiasm of someone who finally felt like he was making a difference. The first 2 years flew by in a blur of late nights and early mornings. Ryan became known as the guy who would always volunteer for the difficult projects, the one who stayed late to help others meet their deadlines. His colleagues liked him. His bosses noticed him. By his 3rd year, he got his first promotion. By his 5th, he was leading his own team. Dating happened occasionally, almost by accident. A coworker's friend at a party. A woman he met at a coffee shop who liked the same band. A setup arranged by his well-meaning mother during a holiday visit. The relationships were pleasant enough, lasting a few months here and there, but they never stuck. Ryan always found a reason to end things before they got too serious, too focused on career goals. Not enough in common. Wrong timing. His friends joked that he was married to his work, and Ryan would laugh and change the subject because it was easier than explaining something he didn't quite understand himself. There was an emptiness he couldn't name, a space inside him that success didn't fill. He'd lie awake some nights in his now much nicer apartment, wondering why achievement felt hollow when he'd reached the goals he'd set for himself. Then morning would come and he'd push the feeling aside and dive back into work. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away, Maya had chosen medicine. The decision came during her sophomore year when she volunteered at a children's hospital. She met a 6-year-old girl with leukemia who drew pictures of butterflies and talked about all the places she wanted to visit someday. The girl's courage, her hope despite everything, broke something open in Maya's heart. She knew then what she was meant to do. Medical school was brutal. The studying never ended. The pressure was constant. There were times Maya survived on 3 hours of sleep and vending machine coffee. Times she cried in her car after particularly hard days. But she never quit. When things got impossible, she would remember that little girl drawing butterflies, and she'd find the strength to keep going. During residency in Boston, Maya chose pediatric oncology. Her friends thought she was crazy. That's the hardest specialty, they said. The saddest one. It'll break your heart every single day. And they were right. It did break her heart. Regularly. Completely. But it also showed her what really mattered in life. What was worth fighting for. Maya dated too, though not often. A fellow resident who understood the crazy hours. A nice guy she met at her friend's wedding. A teacher who made her laugh and brought her flowers. Each relationship lasted a few months before quietly ending. Her friends set her up on blind dates. Her mother called weekly, asking if she'd met anyone special. Maya always had the same response. I'm focused on my career right now. But that wasn't the whole truth, and Maya knew it. The real truth was stranger, more difficult to explain. That certainty from 15 years ago hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown stronger, more solid. She couldn't imagine building a life with anyone else, even though the logical part of her brain said she was being ridiculous. You couldn't wait your whole life for someone who laughed at you once in a library and then disappeared. Yet she did wait. Not passively, not sitting around hoping. She built an incredible life. She became an excellent doctor, known for her skill and compassion. She published research. She mentored younger doctors. She traveled when she could, had good friends, stayed close to her family. Her life was full and meaningful, but there was always that space, that quiet corner of her heart that remained reserved, untouched. Her closest friend once asked her why she sabotaged every relationship just when things got serious. Maya had tried to explain about seeing the future, about knowing with certainty, but it sounded crazy even to her own ears. So she stopped trying to explain and just accepted that people thought she was too picky or too focused on work. Years 7 through 10 were the hardest for both of them. Ryan got another big promotion, moving to Seattle to head a major division. The job came with a great salary, a corner office, and even more responsibility. He was making a real difference, leading projects that would help combat climate change, but success felt increasingly hollow. He watched his team members leave early to coach their kids' soccer games or celebrate anniversaries, and he felt the weight of his empty apartment waiting for him. Maya finished her residency and joined the staff at an excellent hospital. She bought her first house, a small place with a garden she barely had time to tend. She won awards for her patient care. Parents requested her specifically for their sick children. But at night, eating takeout alone at her kitchen table, she sometimes wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. What if she'd built her entire life around a fantasy? What if Ryan had married someone else years ago, and she'd just been too stubborn to accept reality? But neither of them had married. Neither had even come close. By year 15, both had achieved remarkable success in their fields. Ryan was considered a rising star in renewable energy, frequently invited to speak at conferences. Maya had helped establish new protocols for treating pediatric cancer, her research cited in journals. On paper, their lives looked perfect, accomplished, enviable. Yet both carried that same strange emptiness, that sense of waiting for something they couldn't quite name. Ryan had stopped dating entirely, telling himself he was too busy. Maya had done the same, using work as her excuse. Sometimes, though rarely, Ryan would remember that girl in the library with her impossible declaration. And Maya, more often than she admitted, would remember the sound of his laugh, kind and amused, and wonder if the universe was playing some cosmic joke on her. Neither knew that their separate paths were about to converge in the most unexpected way. Neither knew that 15 years of waiting was about to finally make sense. The universe, it seemed, had its own timeline, and that timeline was about to bring them face to face once again. Part 3. The Unexpected Return. The phone call came at 2 a.m. Ryan was still awake, reviewing proposals for a meeting the next day when his phone lit up with his father's number. His stomach dropped even before he answered. Good news never came at 2 a.m. It's your mother. His father's voice was shaking. She collapsed. We're at Memorial Hospital. The doctors think it's a stroke. You need to come home. Ryan was on a plane 6 hours later, having canceled all his meetings and thrown random clothes into a suitcase. The flight back to his hometown felt endless. He stared out the window at clouds and tried not to think about all the times he'd been too busy to visit. All the phone calls he'd cut short because of work emergencies. What if he was too late? What if those quick, distracted conversations were all he'd have left? The town looked different when he arrived. Bigger somehow, more developed. The old movie theater had been replaced by a fancy shopping complex. New restaurants lined streets he remembered as mostly empty. But the hospital was still there, though they'd added a new wing since he'd last been here. His father met him in the waiting room, looking older and more tired than Ryan had ever seen him. They hugged, and Ryan felt his father's shoulders shake with silent tears. She's stable, his father managed. They're running more tests. A doctor is supposed to come talk to us soon. They sat in uncomfortable plastic chairs, drinking terrible coffee from a vending machine, waiting. Ryan's mind was spinning with worst-case scenarios and regrets. The waiting room clock ticked loudly, each second feeling like an hour. When the door finally opened, Ryan looked up expecting a middle-aged male doctor in a white coat. Instead, a woman walked in, younger than he expected, with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun and kind eyes that somehow looked familiar. She wore scrubs and a white coat, a stethoscope around her neck, and she moved with quiet confidence. "Mr. Chen, I'm Dr. Rivera," she said, looking down at her tablet. "I've been overseeing your wife's care." She looked up at Ryan's father, then her eyes shifted to Ryan, and she froze mid-sentence. The tablet almost slipped from her hands. Ryan stared at her, his exhausted brain struggling to place why she looked so familiar. Then recognition hit him like a physical blow. The library, the declaration, the mysterious smile. But that had been a teenager, and this was the accomplished doctor who looked like she commanded respect everywhere she went. "Maya?" he said, barely breathing. For just a moment her professional mask slipped and he saw surprise and something else flash across her face. Then she recovered, smooth and controlled. "Ryan, it's been a long time." Her voice was steady, warm but professional. She turned her attention back to his father. "Let me tell you about your wife's condition." Ryan could barely focus on her words. His mother was stable. The stroke had been moderate. With therapy and time, the prognosis was good. Maya explained everything clearly, answered all his father's questions with patience, showed them scans, and pointed out details. She was competent, reassuring, exactly what they needed in that moment. But Ryan couldn't stop staring. This was the freshman girl who'd walked up to him 15 years ago and said something crazy? This respected doctor who spoke with such authority and kindness? His brain couldn't reconcile the two images. When she finished explaining, Maya pulled out a card. "That's my direct number if you have any questions. Your wife is in excellent hands here. Try to get some rest, both of you. She'll need you strong when she wakes up." She started to leave but paused at the door. She looked back at Ryan, and for just a second that mysterious smile from 15 years ago flickered across her face. "It's good to see you again, Ryan. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances." Then she was gone, leaving Ryan standing there feeling like his entire understanding of the universe had just shifted. Over the next few days, as his mother slowly improved, Ryan kept running into Maya. She'd stop by to check on his mother's progress, always professional, but with a warmth that made everyone in the room feel cared for. Ryan watched her with patience, saw how children's faces lit up when she entered their rooms, noticed how she never seemed rushed even though he knew she must be incredibly busy. His mother adored her. "Such a lovely doctor," she said, her speech still slightly slurred but improving daily. "She sat with me for 20 minutes this morning just talking. Not about medical things, just about life. When was the last time a doctor did that?" Ryan wanted to talk to Maya, really talk to her, but he never found the right moment. She was always in motion, always needed somewhere else. And what would he even say? "Hey, remember when you said something crazy to me 15 years ago and I laughed at you? Funny coincidence, right?" But it didn't feel like a coincidence. It felt like something else entirely, something that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. One evening, he was getting coffee from the hospital cafeteria when he spotted Maya sitting alone at a corner table, reviewing what looked like patient files. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, but still beautiful in a way he hadn't let himself notice before. He walked over before he could talk himself out of it. "Is this seat taken?" Maya looked up, surprised, then gestured to the empty chair. "It's all yours." They sat in awkward silence for a moment. Ryan stirred his coffee unnecessarily. Maya pretended to read her notes but wasn't actually reading them. "Thank you," Ryan finally said, "for taking such good care of my mother. It means everything." "That's my job," Maya said simply. "But you're welcome." "Is it weird?" Ryan asked. "Running into someone from college like this?" Maya's lips curved into a small smile. "Life is weird. This is just another example." She closed her file and looked at him directly. "How have you been?" 15 years is a long time. "Good, busy. I work in renewable energy in Seattle. Use pediatric oncology. Based here, actually. Moved back about 5 years ago when the hospital recruited me." The conversation should have felt stranger than it did. Instead, it felt oddly natural, like picking up a book you'd set down years ago and finding your place immediately. They talked about their work, their lives, carefully avoiding the elephant in the room, that bizarre declaration from 15 years ago. When Maya's pager went off, she stood reluctantly. "I have to go. Emergency consult, of course. Thank you for sitting with me." She paused, studying his face with those perceptive eyes. "Your mother is going to be fine, Ryan. She's strong. Try not to worry so much." As she walked away, Ryan realized something that unsettled him deeply. That emptiness he'd carried for years. That space that success never filled. For the past 20 minutes sitting across from Maya in a hospital cafeteria drinking bad coffee, it hadn't been there. And that scared him more than anything else that had happened in the past week. Part 4. Reconnection. Ryan's mother improved steadily over the next 3 weeks. She moved from intensive care to a regular room, then to physical therapy sessions where she relearned to walk without assistance and worked on strengthening her right side. Her speech improved daily, though she still got frustrated when words wouldn't come as quickly as she wanted. Ryan stayed. He told his office he was taking family leave, set up a makeshift workspace in his childhood bedroom, and attended meetings via video call. His boss understood. His team managed without him, and honestly, Ryan found he didn't miss the office as much as he thought he would. What he didn't tell anyone was that his mother's recovery was only part of why he stayed. He started timing his hospital visits for late afternoon, when Maya typically made her rounds. It wasn't stalking, he told himself. He was just there to support his mother, and if he happened to be in the hallway when Maya walked by, well, that was just coincidence. Never mind that his mother's room offered a clear view of the nurse's station, where Maya often stopped to review charts. Their conversations started small. Brief updates about his mother's progress, comments about the weather, small talk that didn't mean anything except it felt like everything. Then one day Maya asked if he wanted to grab coffee in the cafeteria after she finished her rounds. Ryan said yes so fast he nearly interrupted her. Over terrible hospital coffee, they talked about safer things. Maya told him about a 7-year-old patient who'd beaten lymphoma and was now cancer-free for 2 years. She stops by to visit sometimes, Maya said, her face glowing. She wants to be a doctor now. Says she wants to help kids like I helped her. Ryan shared about his latest project, a solar initiative that would bring affordable renewable energy to rural communities. It's the kind of work that makes the late nights worth it, he said. Knowing you're actually changing lives. You always wanted to make a difference, Maya said quietly. Even back in college. I remember seeing you help other students with their homework, staying late to explain concepts until they understood. You were patient with everyone. Ryan looked at her, surprised. You noticed that? Maya's cheeks colored slightly. I noticed a lot of things. The elephant in the room grew bigger, more impossible to ignore. But neither of them addressed it directly. Not yet. It felt too fragile, this reconnection, like pushing too hard would shatter something precious. Their coffee meetings became regular. 3 times a week, then 4, then almost daily. They talked about their work, their families, their lives over the past 15 years. Maya told him about medical school, the brutal hours, the patients she couldn't save and the ones she could. Ryan shared about his career moves, the projects that succeeded and the ones that failed. The loneliness of success that looked good on paper but felt empty in practice. Why haven't you gotten married? Ryan asked one day, then immediately wanted to take it back. Sorry, that's too personal. But Maya didn't seem offended. She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. I could ask you the same question. I asked first. She smiled. Fair enough. I guess I never met anyone who felt right. Everyone seemed nice enough, but something was always missing. I couldn't put my finger on what exactly. Just knew it wasn't quite right. She looked at him carefully. Your turn. Ryan struggled to put his feelings into words. Same, I suppose. I dated, had relationships, but they never went anywhere. My friends said I was too picky, too focused on work. Maybe they were right. He paused. Or maybe I was waiting for something without realizing I was waiting. The air between them felt charged, electric. Maya opened her mouth to say something, but her pager went off. She glanced at it and sighed. Duty calls. Emergency room consult. As she hurried away, Ryan sat alone with his cold coffee and a growing certainty that terrified him. He was falling for her. Maybe had been falling since that night in the library 15 years ago, and was only now realizing it. The day Ryan's mother was discharged, she gave both Ryan and Maya knowing looks. I think getting sick was the best thing that happened to me, she said, winking at Maya. Brought my stubborn son back home and introduced him to a wonderful doctor. Mom, Ryan said, embarrassed, but his mother just laughed. I may have had a stroke, but I'm not blind. You two should stop dancing around whatever this is and just talk. After helping his mother home and getting her settled, Ryan drove aimlessly around town. He passed his old high school, the pizza place where he'd worked one summer, the park where he'd learned to ride a bike. The town had changed, but the memories remained. He ended up at the university campus. It looked different, more modern, but the library was still there. He parked and walked inside, drawn by something he couldn't name. The building had been renovated, everything sleeker and more digital, but the basic layout remained the same. He found the spot where he'd sat that night 15 years ago. The table was gone, replaced by charging stations and modern furniture, but he knew this was the place. This was where Maya had walked up to him and said something so bold, so impossible, that he'd laughed it off as youthful fantasy. "I wondered if you'd come here." Ryan turned to find Maya standing a few feet away, still in her scrubs from work. "How did you know I'd be here?" "I didn't, I just hoped." She walked closer, stopping beside him. "I come here sometimes. To remember." "Remember what?" "The moment I told you my truth and you laughed." She smiled, but it held a hint of sadness. "The moment I set myself on a 15-year journey of becoming someone worthy of that truth." Ryan's heart was pounding. "Maya, about that night." "You don't have to explain," she interrupted. "You were 22, about to graduate, starting your whole life. Some random freshman walks up and says something crazy. Of course you laughed. Anyone would have. But I never forgot it," Ryan admitted. "I told myself I did, that it was just a weird moment I'd laugh about someday. But I didn't forget. Your words, your face, that certainty you had, it stayed with me. Sometimes I'd remember it at the strangest times. 3 a.m, in the middle of meetings. Always when I was alone." Maya turned to face him fully. "I meant every word, Ryan. I saw something in you that night, something I couldn't explain then and still can't really explain now. A goodness, a kind of quiet integrity, and I knew with absolute certainty that you were going to be important to my life." "That's impossible," Ryan said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You can't just know something like that." "You're right. It is impossible. It defies logic and sense and everything rational." Maya smiled, that mysterious smile he remembered. "But I knew anyway." They stood in the library where their story began, 15 years and a lifetime between that moment and this one. So much had changed. Everything had changed. And yet somehow standing here now it felt inevitable, like every choice they'd made, every path they'd taken, had been leading them back to this exact spot. "I'm scared," Ryan admitted quietly. "Me too," Maya said. "I leave in 2 days. Back to Seattle, back to my job and my life there." "I know. This is terrible timing. Probably the worst. We barely know each other anymore." "That's true." Ryan laughed, but it wasn't the amused laugh from 15 years ago. This was different, raw, real. "So what do we do?" Maya reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were warm, steady, certain. "We stop running. We stop pretending. We admit that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't crazy 15 years ago, and we figure out what comes next, together." Ryan looked down at their joined hands, then back up at her face. She wasn't the 19-year-old freshman anymore. She was an accomplished woman who saved children's lives and carried herself with hard-won confidence. But in her eyes, he saw that same impossible certainty from 15 years ago, unshaken by time or distance or doubt. And for the first time in 15 years, Ryan let himself believe it too. Part 5. The confession. Ryan didn't return to Seattle in 2 days, or 3, or even the following week. He kept finding reasons to extend his stay, telling his office that his mother needed more support, that her recovery was taking longer than expected. None of it was entirely untrue, but it wasn't the whole truth either. The whole truth was that he couldn't bring himself to leave. Not yet. Not now. Maya's hospital was hosting a fundraiser gala at the end of the month, a big event to raise money for the new pediatric cancer wing she'd helped design. She'd mentioned it casually over coffee, not really an invitation, just sharing information, but Ryan heard himself asking if she needed a date for the event before his brain could stop his mouth. "Are you asking me out?" Maya had teased, eyes sparkling. "I guess I am." "Then yes, I'd love that." Ryan bought a suit for the occasion, his first time wearing anything other than casual clothes or work attire in months. He felt nervous in a way he hadn't felt since he was 16, checking his reflection multiple times, adjusting his tie, worrying if he looked okay. His mother watched him fuss and smiled knowingly but said nothing. When he picked Maya up from her house, he had to catch his breath. She wore a deep blue dress that somehow made her eyes look even more striking. Her hair down for the first time since he'd seen her again. She looked stunning, but more than that, she looked happy. Genuinely, radiantly happy. "You clean up nice," she said, grinning. "You're beautiful," he replied, and meant it so completely that it scared him. The gala was held at a hotel ballroom downtown. The room glittered with lights and was filled with well-dressed people drinking champagne and bidding on silent auction items. Maya moved through the crowd with easy grace, stopping to talk with donors and board members, introducing Ryan as her friend. He noticed how respected she was, how people lit up when she approached, how even hospital administrators seemed to defer to her opinion. At one point, he watched from across the room as she knelt down to talk to a young boy in a wheelchair, probably 7 or 8 years old. She spoke to him at eye level, making him laugh, ruffling his hair gently. The boy's parents watched with tears in their eyes, and Ryan suddenly understood the weight Maya carried. These weren't just patients to her. They were children whose lives hung in the balance, whose futures depended on her skill and dedication. Later, they escaped to the hotel's rooftop garden for fresh air. The party noise faded to a pleasant hum below them. City lights twinkled in the distance, and a cool breeze made Maya pull her wrap tighter around her shoulders. Without thinking, Ryan shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "Thank you," she said softly, "for being here tonight. It means a lot. Thank you for inviting me." Ryan leaned against the railing, looking out at the town spread below them. "I'm proud of you, you know. What you've accomplished, who you've become. It's incredible." Maya joined him at the railing. "You've done pretty well yourself. Leading projects that will help save the planet, that's not exactly small potatoes." "It's different," Ryan said. "What I do is important, sure, but it's abstract. Solar panels, energy grids, numbers and projections. What you do is immediate, real. You look into kids' eyes and tell them they're going to be okay, and you make it true." "We all do our part," Maya said, but he could tell she was pleased. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, neither wanting to return to the party. Finally, Ryan couldn't hold back anymore. The question that had been burning in him for weeks spilled out. "Why me, Maya? 15 years ago, why were you so certain?" Maya was quiet for a long moment, choosing her words carefully. "Do you want the logical answer or the truth?" "The truth." She turned to face him, leaning her back against the railing. "I saw you helping another student one night in the library. He was struggling with calculus, getting frustrated, almost in tears. You stayed with him for 3 hours, missing whatever you'd planned to do that evening, explaining the same concept different ways until he understood. And when he finally got it, you were genuinely happy for him. Not annoyed at the time wasted, not condescending. Just happy?" Maya paused, her eyes distant with the memory. "That was the second time I saw you do something like that. The first time, you helped an older lady carry her groceries to her car in the rain, and she tried to give you money as a thank you, but you wouldn't take it. You just smiled and said you hoped someone would do the same for your mother someday." Ryan didn't remember either incident, but he believed her. "I watched you for 3 months, Maya continued, and I never saw you be unkind, not once. Not when you were stressed or tired or frustrated. You treated the cafeteria workers the same as you treated professors. You held doors. You said thank you. You noticed people." She smiled softly. "In a world where most people walk around in their own bubbles, you saw people. Really saw them." "That's just being decent," Ryan said, uncomfortable with the praise. "Exactly. You thought basic decency was just normal, not something special. And that's what made it special." Maya's voice grew stronger, more certain. "That night in the library, I looked at you and I saw the man you'd become. Not the college senior in front of me, but the person you'd grow into. Someone kind and strong and genuinely good. Someone who'd make the world better just by being in it. And I knew with absolute certainty that I wanted to spend my life with that person." Ryan's throat felt tight. "But you didn't even know me. I knew enough. I knew the important things." Maya stepped closer. "And I decided that night that I would become someone worthy of you. Someone who could stand beside you as an equal. I spent 15 years building myself into that person. Becoming a doctor. Learning strength. Developing my own purpose. I didn't wait passively for you, Ryan. I built a life I was proud of. But I built it knowing that someday, if the universe was kind, our paths would cross again." "That's the craziest thing I've ever heard," Ryan said. But his voice was full of wonder, not judgment. "I know. You based your entire life on a 3-month observation of a stranger. I did. That's not logical or sensible or..." I know that too, Maya interrupted. But logic doesn't explain everything. Ryan. It doesn't explain why certain songs make you cry or why certain places feel like home, or why you can meet hundreds of people and only one makes your soul wake up. Ryan reached out and took her hand, the same way she'd taken his in the library weeks ago. I laughed at you. You did, I'm sorry. Don't be. You weren't ready. We weren't ready. Maya squeezed his hand. We needed those 15 years. I needed to become who I am now. You needed to live your life, achieve your goals, figure out what really matters. If we'd gotten together back then, it would have been the wrong time. We would have been different people and it might not have worked. And now? Now, Maya said, her eyes holding his with that same impossible certainty. Now we're ready. Now we're the people we needed to become. Now it's the right time. Ryan pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her. She fit against him perfectly, her head resting on his chest, his chin on top of her head. They stood like that for a long time. Two people who'd spent 15 years on separate paths finally arriving at the same destination. I'm falling in love with you, Ryan whispered into her hair. Actually, I think I might have been falling for 15 years and just didn't realize it. Maya pulled back just enough to look up at him, and he saw tears shining in her eyes. Happy tears. I've loved you for 15 years. I can wait a little longer for you to catch up. He kissed her then, soft and gentle and full of promise. Below them, the gala continued. Music drifted up. People laughed and talked and went about their evening. But on that rooftop under the stars, two people finally stopped running from something they'd both been afraid to believe in. When they finally returned to the party, hands clasped tightly together, Ryan's mother caught his eye from across the room. She smiled and gave him a subtle thumbs up, and Ryan had to laugh. Apparently, everyone had seen this coming except him. As the night ended and Ryan drove Maya home, they talked about logistics and practicalities. His job in Seattle, her position here, the distance, the complications. But for the first time, these obstacles didn't feel insurmountable. They felt like problems with solutions, challenges to figure out together rather than reasons to walk away. We'll make it work, Maya said as Ryan walked her to her door. We've waited 15 years. We can handle a few more challenges. Yeah, Ryan agreed, stealing one more kiss before reluctantly saying goodnight. We can. Driving back to his mother's house, Ryan felt lighter than he had in years. That emptiness that had followed him for so long was gone, filled with something he barely dared to name. Hope, future, love. For 15 years, he'd been running from something he couldn't see. Now he was finally running toward something instead. And that made all the difference. Part 6, The Complications Worry Weeks. Ryan and Maya existed in a perfect bubble. They had coffee every morning before Maya's shift. They took evening walks through the park near the university. They talked on the phone for hours at night, about everything and nothing like teenagers who'd just discovered the magic of connection. Ryan's work meetings became background noise, something he did on autopilot while his real attention was on the life unfolding around him. Then reality crashed in. The email came from Ryan's boss on a Tuesday morning. Subject line, opportunity of a lifetime. Ryan almost deleted it without reading, but something made him click. The company was expanding into Singapore. They needed someone to head up the Southeast Asian operations, someone who understood both the technical side and could build relationships with government officials and local businesses. It was a massive promotion. Significant raise. 3-year contract, possibly longer. They wanted Ryan. He stared at the email for 20 minutes, coffee going cold beside him. This was everything he'd worked toward for years. The kind of position people dreamed about. Leading a major expansion into new markets. Shaping renewable energy policy in a crucial region. Making a real measurable difference in combating climate change. 3 years minimum, possibly 5. In Singapore, 8,000 miles away. When he called Maya to tell her, his voice sounded hollow even to his own ears. There was a long silence on the other end of the line after he finished explaining. That's amazing, Ryan, Maya finally said, and she sounded like she meant it. It's exactly the kind of work you should be doing. But, no buts. This is incredible. You have to at least consider it. But he could hear the strain in her voice, the effort it took to be supportive when her world was potentially crumbling. They agreed to talk more that evening and both hung up feeling worse than before. Maya sat in her office after the call, staring at patient charts without seeing them. She'd known this moment would come. Known that their lives were complicated, that geography and career and timing would challenge them. But knowing it intellectually and feeling it emotionally were very different things. 3 years, maybe 5. Long-distance relationships rarely worked, especially across such distances and time zones. Could they really survive that? Should they even try when they'd only just found each other again? Her phone rang. The hospital administrator. Maya, do you have a moment? I wanted to discuss the new pediatric wing timeline with you. The conversation should have excited her. They were talking about expanding the program, adding more beds, more research opportunities, everything she'd worked for. But Maya found herself only half listening, her mind still on Ryan in Singapore and the impossibility of timing. The board is very impressed with your work, the administrator continued. In fact, we'd like to offer you the directorship of the entire pediatric oncology department. It would mean less direct patient care, more administrative work, but you'd shape the program's future. We're talking about making this hospital a regional center of excellence. Your research, your protocols, we want to build around what you've created. It was everything Maya had worked toward. Recognition, authority to implement real change. A legacy that would outlast her career. She should have been elated. Can I think about it? Maya heard herself say. That evening, Maya and Ryan met at the park. They sat on a bench overlooking the pond, neither quite knowing how to start the conversation they both knew they needed to have. I don't want to lose you, Ryan said finally. Not when I just found you. I don't want to lose you either. But I also don't want to be the reason you pass up an opportunity this big. You're not a reason. You're a person. Someone I love. Maya took his hand. And I love you. But love doesn't solve logistics, Ryan. You'd be gone for years. Different time zones. Different continents. When would we even see each other? Once every few months? People make long-distance work. Some people. Not most people. Maya's voice was gentle but honest. And we're both at crucial points in our careers. You'd be building something new and important. I'd be running an entire department. We'd both be working insane hours, stressed, exhausted. How do we build a relationship under those conditions? Ryan didn't have an answer. They sat in silence, watching ducks paddle across the pond, both feeling the weight of impossible choices. Things got more complicated over the next week. Jessica showed up at Ryan's office unannounced. Jessica, his ex-girlfriend from 3 years ago, the woman he dated for 8 months before things fizzled out. She'd taken a job in Chicago, and they'd parted amicably, or so he thought. I made a mistake, she said, standing in his doorway looking polished and confident in a business suit. Letting you go. Choosing my career over us. I've thought about it every day since, and I finally decided to do something about it. Ryan was too shocked to respond immediately. I talked to your company, Jessica continued. They're opening a Chicago office too. I could transfer there. We could try again. I know you, Ryan. I know your work style, your goals. We made sense together. We could make sense again. Jessica, I'm seeing someone. Is it serious? Ryan wanted to say yes immediately, but doubt crept in. Was it serious? They'd known each other for weeks, technically. The history was longer, but the actual relationship was brand new, and already facing insurmountable obstacles. It's complicated, he admitted. Jessica smiled, taking that as encouragement. Life is complicated, but we could make it simple. Same city, same industry, same goals. Think about it, Ryan. Really think about it. After she left, Ryan sat alone in his office feeling like the universe was playing a cruel joke. One woman offering him simplicity and stability. Another offering him something he couldn't quite name but felt in his bones was important. And a career opportunity that might mean losing both. Maya faced her own complications. Dr. James Foster, a colleague from Boston, showed up for a week-long consulting gig at her hospital. They'd worked together during her residency, and he'd always been clear about his interest in more than friendship. Maya had never been interested, but now, watching him interact with patients and staff, she saw him with new eyes. He understood her world. The long hours, the emotional toll, the victories and defeats that only another doctor could truly comprehend. Over lunch in the cafeteria, he casually mentioned that Boston Children's Hospital was looking for someone to head their oncology research division. I immediately thought of you, James said. Your research is exactly what they're looking for. It would be a huge step up, Maya, and Boston is great. You loved it there during residency. I have a life here now. Do you? James asked gently. Or do you have a job here? Because from what I've seen, you work constantly. You're brilliant at what you do. But you deserve more than just work. You deserve a life too. He didn't push, didn't make it weird. Just put the idea in her head and left it there to grow. That night, Maya looked up the Boston position. The salary was significantly higher. The research opportunities were incredible, and there was nothing tying her here except a relationship that was barely starting and already falling apart. When Maya and Ryan met for dinner that weekend, both were quiet, lost in their own thoughts. The easy conversation from before felt forced now, strained. They were both thinking about futures that didn't include each other, and both felt guilty about it. Jessica contacted me. Ryan finally admitted over dessert neither of them was eating. Maya's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Your ex? Yeah, she wants to try again. Same city, same company. She made it sound so simple. Maya set down her fork carefully. James offered me a position in Boston, leading their research division. They stared at each other across the table, two people drowning in opportunities and choices. What are we doing? Ryan asked quietly. Are we fighting for something real, or are we just trying to recapture some fantasy from 15 years ago? The question hung in the air, heavy and unavoidable. Maya felt tears prick her eyes but refused to let them fall. I don't know. Maybe we were wrong. Maybe the timing is still off. Maybe it was always meant to be just that one moment in the library, and we're trying to force something that shouldn't be forced. Do you believe that? I don't know what I believe anymore. They ended the evening early, both claiming exhaustion. The kiss goodbye felt different, uncertain. As Ryan drove home, he felt that familiar emptiness returning, the one Maya's presence had temporarily filled. And Maya stood in her empty house, surrounded by the silence she'd lived with for years, wondering if she'd spent 15 years believing in something that was never meant to be. Sometimes, the universe brings people together at exactly the right moment, and sometimes it brings them together at exactly the wrong one. Ryan and Maya were beginning to fear they'd gotten the timing wrong after all. Part 7. The choice. For a week, Ryan and Maya barely spoke. Both buried themselves in work, avoiding the conversation they needed to have because having it would mean making decisions neither was ready to make. Ryan spent his days reviewing the Singapore contract details, calculating costs and benefits like it was just another business decision. Maya threw herself into patient care, spending 16-hour days at the hospital because being busy meant not having to think, but avoidance only works for so long. Ryan's mother noticed his mood immediately. She'd recovered remarkably well from her stroke, regaining most of her strength and all of her perceptiveness. One evening, after Ryan had pushed food around his plate for 20 minutes without actually eating, she set down her fork with a decisive click. Enough, she said. You're moping. I didn't raise a moper. I'm not moping. I'm thinking, you're hiding. There's a difference. She fixed him with the look that had made him confess to breaking the neighbor's window when he was 12. What happened with Maya? Ryan sighed and told her everything. Singapore, Jessica. The fear that maybe they'd gotten the timing wrong. The logistics that seemed impossible to overcome. His mother listened without interrupting, her expression thoughtful. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she pushed back from the table and walked to the living room, returning with an old photo album. She opened it to a picture from 30 years ago. His parents on their wedding day, young and happy and full of hope. Your father proposed to me 3 times before I said yes, she said quietly. Did you know that? Ryan shook his head. He'd never heard this story. The first time I said no because I wanted to finish college first. The second time I said no because I got a scholarship to study abroad for a year. The third time I said no because your grandmother was sick and I needed to take care of her. She traced the photo with one finger. Every time I had good reasons. Logical reasons. And every time your father waited because he knew something I was too scared to admit. What was that? That I was making decisions based on fear, not on what I actually wanted. She looked up at Ryan. I was so focused on doing things the right way. Finish school, build a career, handle family responsibilities that I almost missed out on the most important thing in my life. But you said yes the third time. 4th time, she corrected. And only because your grandmother, bless her, sat me down and asked me what I was so afraid of. I told her I was afraid of making a mistake, of choosing wrong, of messing up my life. And you know what she said? Ryan waited. She said that the biggest mistake is letting fear make your decisions for you. That choosing nothing is still a choice, just the cowardest one. His mother closed the album. I almost let fear steal 28 years of happiness with your father. Don't make the same mistake, Ryan. But the logistics are just logistics. Problems to solve, not walls that can't be climbed. She took his hand. The question isn't whether it's convenient or easy. The question is whether Maya is worth fighting for. And from where I'm sitting watching you these past weeks, I think you already know the answer. That night, Ryan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about his mother's words, about fear and choices and what really mattered. At 2 a.m, he got up and made a list. Not of pros and cons. Those were just logic trying to override what he felt in his gut. Instead, he wrote down moments. Maya's laugh when he said something unexpectedly funny. The way she talked to her young patients with such gentleness. How she'd held his hand in the hospital waiting room, a stranger offering comfort. Her certainty 15 years ago that had seemed crazy, but now felt like the sanest thing in the world. When morning came, Ryan had made his decision. Meanwhile, Maya was having her own reckoning. She'd been working late, as usual. When one of her patients, a 10-year-old girl named Lily, who'd been fighting leukemia for 2 years, asked her a question that stopped her cold. "Dr. Rivera, why do you always look sad when you think no one's watching?" Maya blinked, startled. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Lily, bald from chemotherapy but with eyes that seemed to see everything, tilted her head. "You smile and laugh and make jokes with us. But sometimes, when you're writing in your chart or looking out the window, you get this sad face, like you lost something important." Out of the mouths of children, Maya thought. She sat down on the edge of Lily's bed. "You're very perceptive. My mom says that too. She says sick kids grow up faster." Lily fidgeted with her hospital bracelet. "Are you sad about someone?" Maya found herself nodding, unable to lie to this wise little girl. "Is it the tall man who came to visit you? The one with the nice smile?" "How do you know about him?" "I saw you two in the cafeteria. You looked happy then. Really happy, not pretend happy." Lily leaned forward conspiratorially. "My mom says life is too short to waste being sad. And I figure if someone like me knows that, grown-ups should definitely know it." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. Here was this child, facing something no child should have to face, teaching her about priorities and courage. "You're absolutely right, Lily, thank you. So you're going to fix it?" "Whatever made you sad. I'm going to try." Lily grinned, showing the gap where she'd lost a tooth. "Good. You deserve to be really happy, Dr. Rivera. You make everyone else happy. You should get some too." After Lily fell asleep, Maya walked to the hospital chapel. She wasn't particularly religious, but she needed a quiet place to think. She sat in the empty room, surrounded by silence, and finally let herself face the truth she'd been avoiding. She was terrified. 15 years ago, she'd made a bold declaration based on certainty and youth and absolute conviction. But certainty is easy when you're 19 and haven't experienced real heartbreak yet. Now she was 34. Accomplished, independent, and she'd built a life that was completely hers. Letting Ryan in meant risking all of that. It meant being vulnerable in ways she'd carefully avoided for years. What if it didn't work out? What if they tried and failed and she'd wasted all those years believing in something that was never meant to be? But then another voice in her head, one that sounded suspiciously like her 19-year-old self, asked a different question. What if it did work out? What if she let fear steal the very thing she'd spent 15 years preparing for? Maya thought about the children she treated. Kids like Lily who fought every day for more time, more life, more chances to love and laugh and experience the world. They didn't have the luxury of letting fear hold them back. They grabbed life with both hands and held on tight. Who was she to do less? She pulled out her phone and texted Ryan. "We need to talk." "Tomorrow?" His response came immediately. "My place."
10 a.m.?
"I'll be there." The next morning, both Ryan and Maya showed up to his mother's house with speeches prepared, determined to say their piece first. They collided in the doorway, both talking at once, both trying to explain their decisions. "I can't do long distance," Maya started. "I'm turning down Singapore," Ryan said at the same time. They stopped, staring at each other. "What?" Maya asked. "What?" Ryan echoed. They moved to the living room, his mother tactfully disappearing to give them privacy. They sat on the couch, turned to face each other, and tried again. Ryan went first. I'm turning down Singapore. I already told my boss this morning. I negotiated something different, a hybrid position. Based here primarily, with consulting trips internationally. Less money, less prestige, but it keeps me here. Ryan, you can't do that for me. I'm not doing it only for you. He interrupted gently. I'm doing it for me too. I've spent 15 years chasing career goals because I thought that's what mattered. Building bigger things, taking on more responsibility, climbing higher, and it left me empty. These past weeks with you, I've been happier than I've been in years. That matters more than a title or a salary. Maya's eyes filled with tears. I was going to say I can't do long distance because I need to be where you are. I was ready to turn down the directorship here, to follow you to Singapore or wherever you needed to go. You'd do that? Give up everything you've built? Not give up, adapt. There are children who need doctors everywhere. I could find work anywhere. She took his hands. But I can't find another you, Ryan. And I'm tired of being brave enough to save other people's lives, but too scared to risk my own heart. Ryan pulled her close, and Maya let herself sink into his embrace. They held each other for a long time, both shaking slightly, both overwhelmed by the enormity of what they were choosing. We're really doing this? Maya whispered. We're really doing this, Ryan confirmed. It's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. But also kind of amazing. Ryan pulled back just enough to see her face, to see the certainty that had been there 15 years ago now, mixed with adult understanding of what they were risking. 15 years ago you told me something impossible. And now here we are making it possible. Maya smiled, that mysterious smile he'd never forgotten. I told you I was right. You did. And I should have listened. They kissed, soft and sure, and this time there was no uncertainty, no doubt, no logistics standing in the way. Just two people who'd finally learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose love over convenience. Partnership over perfect timing and risk over regret. When they finally emerged from the living room, Ryan's mother was pretending to read a book upside down. She looked up. Part 8. Full Circle. The next 6 months were far from easy, but they were undeniably worth it. Ryan's company wasn't thrilled about his decision to turn down Singapore, but they respected it. The hybrid position he'd negotiated meant he traveled internationally about once a month for 2-week stints, consulting on projects across Asia and Europe. It was exhausting. The constant jet lag and airport security lines and hotel rooms that all looked the same. But it also meant he came home. To a place, to a person. Maya took on the directorship of the pediatric oncology department with some conditions of her own. She would maintain a reduced patient load, never giving up the direct care that had drawn her to medicine in the first place. Yes, she'd handle administrative duties and research protocols and budget meetings, but she'd also keep her Tuesdays and Thursdays for patients. Kids like Lily who needed a doctor who knew their favorite movies and remembered their siblings' names. They moved slowly, deliberately. Ryan kept his apartment in Seattle while spending more and more time at Maya's house. They learned each other's routines, quirks, and habits. Maya discovered that Ryan talked to himself while working, muttering calculations and solutions under his breath. Ryan learned that Maya couldn't function without coffee but refused to drink it after 2 in the afternoon, claiming it disrupted her sleep despite zero evidence to support this. They had their first real fight about 3 months in, something stupid about dishwasher loading, strategies that really wasn't about dishwashers at all, but about learning to share space with another person. Maya stormed off to the bedroom. Ryan stood in the kitchen fuming. Then both started laughing at almost the same moment, realizing how ridiculous they were being. We're terrible at this, Maya said, emerging from the bedroom. The worst, Ryan agreed. But we're doing it anyway? Absolutely. They were building something, brick by brick, mistake by mistake, laugh by laugh. It wasn't the fairy tale Maya had imagined at 19. It was better, messier and more real and more solid. Ryan's mother watched them with quiet satisfaction, occasionally dropping hints about grandchildren that both Ryan and Maya pretended not to hear. Maya's parents visited and immediately loved Ryan, her mother whispering to Maya in the kitchen that she'd known there was someone Maya was waiting for. She'd just never pushed. 6 months became 8, then 10. Ryan finally gave up his Seattle apartment, officially making the move permanent. They adopted a dog from the local shelter. a scruffy mixed breed with one ear that flopped and one that stood up. Ryan wanted to name him something dignified like Maxwell. Maya insisted on naming him Pancake. Pancake it was. On the anniversary of Ryan's mother's stroke, which was also in a strange way the anniversary of their reunion, Ryan took Maya back to the university library. It had become their place, the spot where their story had begun 15 years ago and restarted 1 year ago. "I have something to ask you," Ryan said as they stood near where that old table used to be. Maya's heart started pounding. She'd been expecting this, hoping for it, but still felt nervous excitement flood through her. Ryan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. But before he could open it, Maya held up her hand. "Wait. Before you do that, I need to say something." Ryan paused, looking uncertain. Maya took a deep breath. 15 years ago, I stood here and told you something crazy. I was certain, but I was also 19 and didn't really understand what I was saying. I knew who you were, but I didn't know who you'd become. And I definitely didn't know who I'd become." She took his free hand. "Now I'm 34. I've lived a whole life. I've succeeded and failed and learned hard lessons. I've seen the best and worst of what life can throw at us. And standing here now, I can say with absolute certainty, real certainty, not just youthful conviction, that you are the best decision I've ever made. Even when it was hard. Even when it was scary. Especially then." Ryan's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "So yes," Maya continued. "Before you even ask whatever you're about to ask, my answer is yes." Ryan laughed, a slightly watery sound. "You couldn't let me have my moment? I've been waiting 15 years. I'm done waiting." He opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring. "Maya Rivera, will you marry me and officially make that crazy prediction from 15 years ago come true?" "I already said yes. Say it again. I want to hear it." "Yes. 1,000 times yes." Ryan slipped the ring on her finger and it fit perfectly, as if designed specifically for her hand. They kissed there in the library, in the spot where their story began, while a few college students pretended not to watch and smile at the romantic scene unfolding. As they walked out of the library hand in hand, Maya paused at the door. "You know what's funny?" "What?" "I was so sure 15 years ago, but I had no idea what I was actually signing up for. The real work. The compromise. The fights about dishwashers. The way you leave your socks on the bathroom floor despite my repeated reminders. I notice you didn't mention your habit of stealing all the blankets." "That's called sharing," Maya said primly. "But my point is, knowing all of that now, experiencing all the messy, complicated reality of building a life with someone, I'd still choose you. Every time, even with the socks?" "Even with the socks." They planned a simple wedding, neither wanting anything elaborate. Just close family and friends in the hospital chapel where Maya had made her decision to fight for them. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. They'd found each other again because of illness, reconnected in a place of healing, and were now celebrating new beginnings in that same sacred space. Maya's young patient Lily, now in remission and thriving, insisted on being the flower girl. She took her duties very seriously, practicing her walk down the aisle with the kind of determination she'd shown in fighting cancer. Ryan's mother cried happy tears through the entire ceremony. Maya's parents beamed from the front row. The ceremony was short but meaningful. They wrote their own vows, of course. Ryan spoke about certainty and patience, about a 19-year-old girl who'd seen something in him that he hadn't yet seen in himself. Maya talked about timing and growth, about 15 years that felt both impossibly long and surprisingly short. "I told you that you'd be my husband," Maya said, her voice clear and strong. "And everyone thought I was crazy. Maybe I was. But if believing in impossible things makes me crazy, then I'm happy to be crazy for the rest of my life." "I laughed at you," Ryan said. "And I'm so glad you didn't let my doubt shake your certainty. Thank you for being patient enough to wait for me to catch up to what you already knew." They exchanged rings. They were pronounced married. They kissed while everyone cheered. And as they walked back down the aisle together, officially husband and wife, both felt the rightness of this moment, this path, this choice. The reception was held at the same hotel where the hospital fundraiser had been, where they'd stood on the rooftop and Maya had explained her 15-year conviction. This time, instead of escaping to that rooftop, they stayed in the party, dancing and laughing and celebrating with everyone who'd supported them. Ryan's colleagues from work were there, the ones who'd watched him choose love over Singapore and respected him more for it. Maya's fellow doctors were there, including James from Boston, who'd gracefully accepted her decision and was now dating someone else who made him happy. Even Jessica showed up briefly, offering genuine congratulations and admitting she'd found someone too. Late in the evening, as the party wound down, Ryan and Maya finally snuck away to the rooftop garden, needing a moment alone. The city spread out below them, lights twinkling like stars that had fallen to earth. "We did it," Maya said softly. "We did. Only took 15 years. Best 15 years I ever spent." Ryan wrapped his arms around her from behind, and they stood there in comfortable silence. Two people who'd finally arrived at the destination, one of them had seen clearly from the very beginning. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd believed you that night?" Ryan asked. "If I'd said yes when you made that crazy declaration?" Maya thought about it. "I think we would have tried and failed. We weren't ready." "I wasn't ready. I was certain about who you were, but I hadn't become who I needed to be yet. And you needed those 15 years to figure out what really mattered. So the timing was perfect after all?" "The timing was terrible," Maya corrected with a laugh. "But the story was perfect. Sometimes the long way around is the right way." They stayed on that rooftop until the hotel staff politely suggested they should probably leave. They drove to Maya's house, their house now, and Pancake greeted them with enthusiastic jumps and face licks, not caring at all that they were wearing fancy wedding clothes. That night, getting ready for bed in their bathroom, both tired and happy, Ryan watched Maya brush her teeth and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Not just for her, but for the journey that had brought them here. The 15 years of separate growth. The twist of fate that brought him home when his mother got sick. The courage it took for both of them to choose each other over easier options. "What are you thinking about?" Maya asked, noticing his expression in the mirror. "That you were right. That crazy, impossible thing you said 15 years ago, you were absolutely right." Maya spit out her toothpaste and turned to face him. "I usually am. And so humble about it, too."